Our next testimonial is by Sagadahoc County Sheriff Joel Mary. Sheriff Mary is a 33-year veteran law enforcement officer who has held leadership roles with various law enforcement and community coalitions. A past president of the Maine Sheriff's Association, he also represents the sheriffs on a number of groups, including the State Methamphetamine Task Force and the Enforcing Underage Drinking Laws Task Force. He acted as chair of the State Board of Corrections and most recently worked with the U.S. Attorney as the co-leader of the Law Enforcement Work Group on Anti-Heroin and Opiate Initiative. Sheriff Mary's education includes bachelor's in business studies and organizational leadership with a concentration in human resource management and an AS in law enforcement technology. Sheriff Mary graduated from the New England Institute of Law Enforcement Management in 2000 and the National Sheriff's Institute in 2012. Here is Sheriff Joel Mary.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'd like not only to thank Chris for the nice introduction, but I'd also like to thank Jeff Bates and members of the Lincoln County Democratic Committee for extending an invitation to speak and to say a few words about this year's honoree, my good dear friend and colleague, Sheriff Todd Brackett. I'll do my best to keep as brief as possible because I've been accused of my tendency to ramble on, but safe to say, there's so much that could be said in recognition of Todd. For those of you who don't know, Todd is the most senior sheriff in the state, having served those 18 years. That doesn't mean he's the oldest, but it does mean he's been around the longest. And with longevity comes wisdom. And I believe Todd is one of the wisest law enforcement officers that I have ever known in my 36 years in the profession. I first got to know Todd before he became sheriff. I believe he was the police chief in Damascotta at the time. My first acquaintance with him was through the old District 6 Training Council, in which law enforcement officers from the 4 coastal counties that make up Prosecutorial District 6 would generally meet monthly to train on new topics. Todd stood out because he was that guy that always asked questions. You know, that guy? Yeah. I remember when Todd won the election to become sheriff in Lincoln County. I guess it was a surprise to some, but I didn't know enough about Lincoln County to have an opinion either way. But I do know that he chose Wayne Appleby to be his chief deputy. And I had known Wayne for a bit, and I was very impressed with him and his abilities. At the time, I was a lieutenant with the Bath Police Department, and building relationships with neighboring police agencies was important, as it still is today. I remember Wayne asking me to be a part of a couple of shoot and review panels. And during the briefings for the panels, he made it clear as to what the sheriff was looking for. And at the time, I thought how impressive that was, the level of transparency and openness that I saw from Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. It was clear to me that Lincoln County SO was a well-run organization, adhering to the best practices in the profession. I retired from the Bath Police Department in 2004, and I took a break from law enforcement. Honestly, I missed it, and I was encouraged to run for sheriff in 2008. It's a decision that I'm grateful for at times, and at other times I ask myself, what was I thinking? Once I was elected, the first sheriff to welcome me was Todd. During my sabbatical, Sagadahoc and Lincoln counties went in on a joint venture to build Two Bridges Regional Jail. So naturally, Todd and I had a need to work closely together. Unfortunately, there were many things happening in the state related to county corrections at that time. And as a former police officer, I had little or no experience with corrections. We were facing some trying times. At the time, I felt I had to learn while on the run, and Todd proved to be the one source of information and understanding that I could depend on. While our two counties didn't always see eye to eye on the governance of Two Bridges Regional Jail, the professional relationship between Todd and myself never wavered, and in fact, a friendship arose that I still cherish today. Over the years, Todd has been somewhat of a mentor to me, even though I'm a bit older than he is. He often shares similar thoughts and ideas on issues surrounding the office of sheriff that I also hold to. Todd was the president of the Maine Sheriff's Association when I became sheriff, and he is still highly involved in the association, serving currently as its treasurer. Over the years, the association has been a well-respected organization in the state, and it's often looked to for support and guidance on everything from legislation to early childhood education. I cannot begin to tell you how many times Todd has testified on behalf of the association or attended meetings representing the interest of the association to make the state of Maine a better and more prosperous place to live, to work, and to raise a family. Todd is a big believer in county government. He believes that the office of sheriff is an integral part of county government and what it does for its citizens that it serves. You cannot be any closer to the people than to be their protector. Todd is a collaborator. I don't know if the old adage, you keep your friends close, but you keep your enemies even closer, really applies, but Todd wants to work with everyone, and he's always willing to acknowledge and to accept different points of view, regardless of the topic. He has an incredible knack to bring people around to understand his point of view and the way he believes and why he does. Todd is a humble and sincere person. He is frequently the one who thinks of others first and always willing to extend whatever services or assistance he can afford, be it for a deputy's family in another county or a local citizen from one of the small towns in Lincoln County. The Maine Sheriff Association has long been a lead supporter of Camp Postcard, a summer camp for elementary school students in the 5th and 6th grade. No sheriff in the state has been a bigger champion of the camp than Todd. From supplying goods and materials to freeing up his staff to participate in the week-long program, Todd has been an ardent supporter. He has allowed his chief deputy, Rand Maker, to be one of the organizers and overseer of the operation. Through Todd's leadership, he convinced the MSA to leave a legacy gift to the endowment of Camp Postcard of $25,000. Todd is a caring and compassionate person. Nothing speaks to this more than his innovative community outreach program, in which the Sheriff's Office works in partnership with the Addiction Resource Center and the Maine Department of Corrections Office of Probation and Parole to work with individuals who may be suffering from substance use disorder. This program has been a success, and it has helped combat the recent opioid epidemic in Lincoln County. This program has served as a model for one that we recently began in Saginaw County. The results are outstanding. These programs have supported people to keep them out of jail and work in jobs to support themselves and their families. Without a doubt, it has also saved lives. I could go on and share more about the work that Todd has done as a sheriff of Lincoln County, but you know, he's doing great things because that's why the people of Lincoln County have continued to elect him to be the sheriff. Todd is highly regarded by his peers, and I'm confident that if you ask any sheriff in the state how Todd has influenced their work, they'll give you numerous examples. Like any other elected position, Maine's 16 sheriffs are unique in their own ways, and each represents the diversity that exists in each of Maine's counties. We have Republican sheriffs and we have Democratic sheriffs. We even have some that are independent. We don't always agree, and that's understandable. At times, our discussions are passionate. Todd always seems to be the voice of reason. He understands that political waters sometimes run deep, even amongst sheriffs. But so often he'll remind us that there is much more that unites us, that we can find common ground to stand together on. Whether it's a hospitality room or a legislative committee room, Todd seems to always be near the center. And when he speaks, people listen, and we're all better because of it. It is an absolute honor to speak to you this evening. I'm incredibly happy for my friend. This is an incredible honor and recognition, as well as fitting for someone who has dedicated their life to protecting the people he serves. The citizens of Lincoln County are so fortunate to have Todd Brackett as not just their sheriff, but as one of their own. I wish you well, my friend.
Thank you, Sheriff Joel Mary.